Hello, folks. Breaking news out of Washington, D.C., where President Joe Biden has done it. That's right, folks. He's actually gone ahead and done it. Instead of dealing with our foreign policy as a grown-up, an adult would, he's playing his silly game of brinkmanship yet again. President Joe Biden has formally approved the deployment of 3,000 U.S. troops to Poland, Germany, and Romania. This was announced today by the Pentagon. It's a move to bolster NATO countries in Eastern Europe with tens of thousands of Russian troops amassed along the Ukraine's border. Ukraine is not a NATO member. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, retired admiral, said the deployments included roughly 2,000 troops that would deploy from the U.S. to Poland and Germany. In addition, approximately 1,000 troops currently based in Germany were moving to Romania. It's totally consistent with what I told Putin in the beginning. As long as he's acting aggressively, we're going to make sure we reassure our NATO allies in Eastern Europe we're there, and Article 5 is a sacred obligation. Well, indeed, Article 5 is a sacred obligation, but it's been invoked once, and that was on behalf of the United States when NATO invoked it after we were attacked on 9/11, the only time it's been invoked. And Article 5 doesn't cover the Ukraine. It's not a NATO member. So how is it a sacred obligation to the Ukraine? Now, last week, noted intelligence analyst Circleback Saki said an invasion by Russian troops of Ukraine continued to be imminent, a description that drew anger from Kiev Ukrainian officials, including President Zelensky, who disagreed, arguing the descriptions could cause panic and economic turmoil. The U.S. deployment to Poland consists of about 1,700 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division's Infantry Brigade combat team based at Fort Bragg. There are also 300 members from the 18th Airborne Corps, the parent unit of the 82nd, from Fort Bragg deploying. And the U.S. is moving a Stryker squadron, about 1,000 troops from Germany to Romania. Most likely they'll be coming from Grafenwehr. Now, since this deployment is not a rotation of existing troops out of those countries, not a scheduled training exercise, and not in response to any existing humanitarian crisis, this is in fact a dangerous escalation and direct threat to Moscow. Far from tamping down tensions, this stupidity will only escalate them. Also, dropping a handful of troops 1,800 kilometers from reinforcement in Germany, that's the distance between, say, Frankfurt and Bucharest in Romania, places our forces in grave danger should Russia genuinely take action against Ukraine. This juvenile, idiotic foreign policy from someone that ought to know better, who's spent over 50 years suckling from the government teat in Washington, D.C., 30 plus years in the Senate, 8 years as a demented vice president, and now over a year as a president. And what has he accomplished? The 1990s crime bill, which led to automatic incarceration for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young black men. His singular accomplishment. I wouldn't call that an accomplishment, Joe. This is a dangerous escalation, and it is wholly unnecessary. Why is Joe Biden lying to the world and lying to America, telling us this to be the largest invasion since World War II? Well, we all aren't that stupid. We know that 300,000 Chinese crossed the Yalu in 1950 to push back UN and American forces in the Korean conflict. We know that in 1979, 200,000 People's Liberation Army troops poured across the border and invaded Vietnam. We know that in 1980, 150,000 Iraqi troops rolled across the border and invaded Iran. We also know that in the first Gulf War in 1991, 670,000 coalition troops invaded Iraq. I was one of them, right there. 470,000, including myself, were American troops. In 2003, when a coalition invaded Iraq, we had 171,000 troops. So how is Russia, with 127,000 troops amassed on the border, the largest invasion since World War II? And the list goes on and on of his endless lies. He was part of the administration which denied lethal self-defense weaponry to the Ukraine, putting it at risk. He's also part of the administration that overthrew the government of Ukraine back in 2014. Also part of the government that did nothing when Russia annexed the Crimea. And now he's blustering about this with a nuclear armed power. Why is Joe Biden blustering with Ukraine on the table with Russia? With over 10,000 warheads and intercontinental ballistic missiles and sea-launched ballistic missiles pointed at our nation. What is he covering up? Does it have anything to do with Peter Schweitzer's book, Red-Handed, that just came out? Does it have to do with the fact that over 1 million Americans are testing positive for the Rona each and every day? Or over 2,000 are dying, record numbers, and his absolute failure? His only answer is jab, 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 or lose your job. What is Joe Biden covering up? The bottom line is this. He's a failure, a complete and total failure. And this is a dangerous escalation, a dangerous game to play with Russia. and it will lead to nothing but misery. Unless it's all been scripted in advance by Putin and his buddy Joe, so they can all back down at the last minute with a few concessions. Maybe the Ukraine doesn't enter NATO for a guaranteed 10 years. Maybe something else comes about. Who knows? But now the U.S. is the one escalating the tensions. Russia has put no troops on the border with Poland, no troops on the border with the Baltic states, no troops on the border with Moldova to threaten Romania. No naval ships have blockaded the ports of Romania. No naval ships out of St. Petersburg have interdicted travel into Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, let alone Poland. So how exactly is Article 5 relevant here? And what threat is there? And why in the world would you put 3,000 of our troops isolated without reinforcement on the eastern borders of the Russian nation? What a clown. What a clown car show. This disastrous foreign policy is disgraceful, and it should be stopped. Well, if you're not a subscriber or a follower, please become one, folks, on whatever platform you're watching this. We have to overcome censorship. Thank you so much. Cheers.